Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Stop Emotional Eating webinar. We have this weekly on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock p.m., and the goal of this webinar is to share with you my experiences. Let me introduce myself. My name is Gil Rolon. I'm an author, and I'm a recovering emotional eater. I'm passionate about this subject because I'm driven to solve this for myself. I've made great progress, but I'm still on the road. I'm still learning. I'm still trying. And you'll get to hear about my experiences as we work through this webinar series. So, why do we need to talk about this? Well, this is because emotional eating is only kind of advertised when it comes to teaching people how to discover if they are an emotional eater. One of my biggest gripes was, okay, I know I'm an emotional eater. Why don't they talk about the emotions that are creating this unhealthy lifestyle that I just can't seem to break? So, what we like to do every week, we have a subject. Last week was to define what emotions are. So let's review that. So, what are emotions? Well, we learned that they're mind body reactions. In other words, our mind reacts with an emotion, the thoughts we have, and our bodies react with an emotion, the way we feel, a pain in our stomach, nervousness, anxiety. And we learned that there are natural and unnatural emotions. A natural emotion happens and you get to resolve it. In other words, when you feel the feelings, you understand there's something you have to do. And so you take the actions necessary, whether it's making a choice, getting out of a situation, addressing someone, and having that difficult conversation. When we do those things, we actually resolve our emotions because we put ourselves in a safe space. And so we feel relaxed and our emotions dissolve because we resolve them. Now, compared to an unhealthy emotion, these emotions never get resolved. We carry them with us. So instead of really thinking about how we're going to resolve it, what action we have to take, because remember, emotions are ways for our mind and body to tell us we have to do something. But because we're so busy with our minds and worrying and thinking and our bodies just doing, we don't open up the space to try to resolve that emotion. So what happens? That emotion stays with us and we carry it for hours, sometimes days, months, and even years. And because it doesn't get resolved, it's unhealthy. And those are the emotions we have to learn about and we have to learn how to resolve. Let's talk about the homework we discussed last week. And I'll answer the questions for myself. So the first question is, what is the dominant emotion or emotions you experience every day or regularly that you suppress? Well, for me, it was fear. Every day I was anxious. Every day I was worried about the next bad thing that was going to happen in my life. When I heard bad news, I applied it to me. Even though intellectually I knew I shouldn't be affected by that, but my body didn't know and it reacted to all those thoughts and feelings that happened to me, and I just couldn't control it. The next question asks, when was the first time you experienced this negative emotion? This is a this is a question I did have to ask myself. I was like, when did I start first being afraid so much about everything going on? And after thinking about it, I realized it was when I was about 5 or 6 years old. We were living in a dangerous neighborhood. There was a lot of crime, and our apartment got regularly burglarized. So as a young boy, I learned that life was scary. My home was not safe, and at any time someone could break in. So that's when I learned the first time I started to constantly have this emotion of fear. Okay, today's session is about discovering our emotions. Now that we know what they are, how do we discover them? How do we understand them? And what do we do with them? The first thing we have to do is understand the cycle of emotional suppression. What are the steps we take when we're constantly suppressing our emotion and our emotions do not get resolved? Well, the first step is that emotion emerges somehow, and it could be positive or negative. We start to think thoughts, start to feel feelings, and we don't know what to do with these things. And that's why they can be positive or negative. For instance, something can be happening that should elicit a positive feeling, like let's say happiness or love. But if our early experiences of life were in unloving environments where our caretakers didn't show us love, nurture us, make us feel special, when we enter an experience like that, we don't know what to do with it. So we suppress it. It's just another emotion we don't understand, and we feel uncomfortable, so we suppress it. And how do we do this suppression? How do we avoid our feelings? Well, because we said emotions are a mind body experience, we do it through our minds and also through our body. Well, how do we use our mind? We try to keep our minds busy. We try to think our way out of our problems. We try to make excuses. We tell stories and we anticipate things that could go wrong, and we create conflicts, and sometimes we imagine them and then we actually make them happen. How about the body? Well, we keep our bodies busy by constantly working. You know, many workaholics are really just trying to suppress their negative emotions that they just don't know how to deal with. And so we do things for others. We do favors. We have to attend parties. We have to take care of other people's needs first. We do everything physically that we have to do so we don't have to stop, take time, and address our negative emotions. So, how do we break out of this cycle? First, I'd like to say that doing this takes a lot of time, takes a lot of patience. It's a skill that you have to learn. And I would like to give a warning. If you are having panic attacks, then you have to speak to a professional, because a panic attack is basically the culmination of all your suppressed emotions breaking through cracks because you just can't hold it in anymore. And it feels like a physical heart attack, like you can't catch your breath, like you can't think straight. You think you're going to die. You tell stories of doom. And this could be very dangerous and very unhealthy. So before you start process of learning how to name your emotions and process them, if you're having panic attacks, speak to a professional. They're trained to help you slowly learn how to open that up and how to be able to handle when you do have panic attacks. So the other, for the rest of us, the first step we need to take in order to engage our emotions is we have to acknowledge those emotions, but through awareness. And the awareness I'm talking about is being present, fully understanding what you're dealing with, totally conscious of what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and not caught up in the mind body, suppression of doing things to avoid your feelings. And remember, because it is a mind body experience, we have to have awareness so we can stop our minds from judging things. Mindfulness is really effective when you have no judgments. And judgments just means that you label something as bad or as terrible or as ugly. So when we have these thoughts of how bad things are, or we have negative talk that says how bad we are, we're just creating judgments. So if you can stop the judgment, you can just see the emotion of, okay, this feels bad, but it's not that I am bad. And that takes time to learn. And once you do that, now you can actually start to identify this emotion you're feeling. What are the thoughts you're having, and what do they mean? What are the feelings in your body that you're having, and what do they mean? Why are you having these reactions? Once you learn to name the emotion, you can actually start to express it and process it. One of the things you have to realize, emotions have many layers. For example, the emotion fear has many layers. It can be dread, it can be alarm, it can be fright, it can be terror, it can be anxiety, it can be always worrying about things or constantly being overwhelmed in your daily activities. But being able to name these things, you can start to see, okay, this is what I'm experiencing it. And then you can use your mind to say, what action do I have to take to resolve this emotion? But we have to learn how to quiet the mind. That's the only way we can calm the body. In fact, we can use the body to quiet the mind. Through breath work, you can actually quiet your mind and learn how to examine your thoughts and understand which ones are the thoughts that help you resolve your emotion and what thoughts actually constantly keep you in that negative cycle of bad emotions. Another step you have to learn is to identify the trigger, which really means the source of this emotion. There has to be some type of event in your life, and it's usually when you're young, that caused this type of negative emotion or created an environment that created this emotion. And sometimes you need to speak to a therapist in order to find this out because it can be very confusing. And some things you don't even fully remember or understand or comprehend because they happened when you were so young. But a therapist can help you to understand. You don't have to know all the details, you just have to become aware of them so that you can start to heal them. And finally, when you're at the point where you can process your emotions, now you can express them. You allow yourself to cry or allow yourself to be angry in a healthy way, or you allow yourself to do it whatever physically or mentally you have to do uh, to to find a resolution to that emotion, whether it's taking a walk or doing something that's soothing but in a healthy way, exercise, yoga, anything that calms the mind and body and allows you to process those emotions. Okay, so that's a lot of work, right? And that's why I said it takes time, it takes years to learn how to do these steps, to become aware and process your emotions. So the key is you want to take small steps to engage your emotions. The smaller, the better. There's no rule. If you just take 1 minute a day to start there to try to quiet your mind, or to slow down, or try to name your emotion, that's okay. Go as far as you can. And if you find yourself getting overwhelmed, you can't think straight, your heart starts racing, then just do some breath work, stop, and just Be proud of yourself for what you have done because you are on the road to learn how to engage and process your emotions. It's important to know that you do need support. So, whether it's talking to a therapist or a close friend or a partner that can just listen to you, and they have to understand how to be a listener. They have to have emotional regulation themselves. You don't want to speak to someone who's in the same boat as you. And if you do, you both will trigger each other and you won't really resolve anything. You'll just become more inflamed in the stress of your anxiety. So definitely take the time to pick and get the right support system. Okay, how do we quiet our minds? Well, first we have to understand that we have to learn how to use our thoughts. Sometimes we think thoughts are automatic and we have no control over them. But that's only thoughts that are attached to an unhealthy emotion. Our thoughts are really a tool, and we're the ones that use that tool. So we master our minds do not master us. When we're caught in that loop of constant negative thoughts, constant negative actions, we basically create a thought process that becomes a negative habit. And that's why we feel out of control. So you have to learn to not judge those thoughts, but put them where they belong because racing thoughts block awareness. So again, you have to learn how to quiet the mind, relax the body, and use your mind as a tool so you're in control. And you can then become aware of what you have to do, what decisions you have to make in order to resolve that emotion or that situation. I'd like to expose you to a great book that I read, and it helps you identify emotions. It's called Atlas of the Heart. Maybe you've heard of it. It's by the author Brene Brown, and she's a researcher that spent decades of her life researching emotions. And this book is almost like an emotion encyclopedia. You can look it up, and when you're feeling a certain way, you can look in that book and say, okay, what happens when things don't go the way you want? You can look in this book, and she expresses the emotions we will feel and why they happen when we feel those negative emotions of frustration and anxiety and fear. And I believe that you will benefit from learning from this book because we have to learn how to identify emotions. We have to understand ourselves and how we work as humans and how we sometimes do things positively and why sometimes we do things negatively. Okay, so just as a review, how do we break free of our negative habits? First, we have to identify the negative emotions, right? We have to know what they are, what they look like, what they feel like. We have to discover their origins. When is the first time you learned to feel this way? Once you do that, you have to mourn your past trauma. What did you lose that caused all that negative emotional states that you still carry on to this day? And most importantly, you have to use self love to heal the present mental and physical pains that you are experiencing. And self love is talked about a lot, but to put it simply, all it means is that you're going to love yourself just like you love all the other people in your life. And you're going to do for yourself all the things you do for the other people in your life that you love. But you will not put yourself last. And sometimes we don't put ourselves on that list at all. Most of the time, you have to put yourself first on that list so you can have a healthy emotional state and healthy physical bodies so we can help others and we can do things for others and we can show love to others. So it's not selfish because self-love is the only way that we're going to take care of ourselves and do all these things that we have to discover and process our emotions. Every week, I go over this cycle of change that I found helped me in my life when I was trying to discover how I was going to make changes in my life. So, the first step that I saw was I had to tell my story. And the story just basically means understanding what happens in your life, your family history, your culture, the political environment that you grew up in, you know, how things happened in your family and how they treated you and how other people treated you. Telling your story helps you to understand what environments cause these negative feelings, negative reactions. And that story will show that you lost something. For instance, you learn at the beginning of the session, I learned as a little boy that my life wasn't safe. My home wasn't safe. So I saw the world as unsafe. So what did I lose? My story told me that I lost the feeling of safety. And so even as an adult, I never felt safe and I always worried about the next bad thing that was going to happen in my life. I'm pretty sure you can relate. Once you understand what you lost, now you can mourn your past. And mourning just means grieving. And grieving just means that you allow yourself to express the things that happened at that time when you lost, you know. For instance, I lost the ability to feel safe. So I had to mourn that little boy and let him be sad about it, let him cry about it, let him be angry about it that he lived in a place where he didn't feel safe. And then ultimately, you get to the point where you accept what happened and you accept the good qualities that it taught you and you release the bad qualities that haunt you. And so you can then mourn your past. But the next and final stage is to heal your present. You have to make many decisions. You have to do many things in your present life to improve your life. So, doing the emotional work to learn how to process your emotions, eating better, exercising, improving your mental and physical health. All these things that you have to do in the present is going to make your life better. And because you mourn your past, you're not being haunted by your past. And your story now becomes a source of inspiration and a source that tells you it doesn't define you anymore, but you are now a new person living a new life, telling a new story, and making each day the best that you can. Okay, so we have homework for this week as well. Now, some of these questions may sound repetitive, but that's because I want you to dig deep and I want you to really think about how your past and the emotions and all the things you're dealing with can can expose things in you so you can start to make the steps to heal them. Okay, again, so what is the dominant emotion or emotions you experience every day, regularly, and how is it expressed? The next one is, how did your family and culture express emotions? And the final question is, what is the usual way you process your emotions? Okay, so that ends our session for tonight. I want to thank you all for attending and continue to send me questions, continue to learn about me. Let me put up some information. You can go to gilrolonbooks.com. You can learn about my work. You can learn about my experiences with emotional eating. And if you have any questions, you can send them to let's connect at gilrolonbooks.com. If you have any subjects you want me to talk about related to emotional eating, send them to me and I'll put them in the next sessions. So thank you again, and everyone have a good night. Thank you.